Alrighty, guys. Time for some Emperor's Children lore, baby. Oh, yeah. You see, the funny thing about the Emperor's Children is that they are very different, but yet very the same when you compare them when they first started versus what they are now. And it's actually kind of funny because of all the Primarchs, their Primarch was kind of not a warrior at all. He really wasn't much of an anybody, which is interesting to note, considering that just about every Primarch, literally all the Primarchs, were warriors at some point in their life. But Fulgrim, he really kind of wasn't. He was more of an artisan, more of a CEO of a business. That's how he perfected the world of Chemos. But a warrior? Not really. And you kind of see it in the early days of the Third Legion, which is the Emperor's Children. So let's talk about their battle strategies, their tactics, and just how kind of interesting it is when you have a non-warrior legion doing warlike tactics. One of the interesting things about the Emperor's Children was that they are the only legion, the only one, that really shows what I believe the Space Marines were supposed to be after the Great Crusade. If Horus never betrayed the Emperor, what the Space Marines were supposed to be. They were supposed to be like leaders, like supervisors, managers, CEOs. They were supposed to be officers, any sort of mentor to humanity. And you see this a lot with the Emperor's Children, because when it came to researching their battle tactics and it came to researching all the Horus Heresy books that I have, like Fulgrim and a few others, they're really, really interesting because they're the only legion that is humane. They deal a lot with humanity. They keep talking to other Lord Commanders. They keep talking to other civilians like Remembrancers. And they actually offer a lot of insight to these people. And this is partly due to the Legion's history. So let's talk a little bit about that. You see, this Legion was always outnumbered. They were actually only at 200 men left when they found Fulgrim. 200. They got the Thousand Sons beat because the Thousand Sons were down to 1,000. But being down to 200, that's low. That's extremely low. It's actually surprising they bounced back from that, but they did. And being down to 200 men, it taught them a few things about leading forces, and this is where it all ties together with their strategies. They are excellent at leading men to battle. They are excellent at using the forces they have at their disposal to get the maximum outcomes. In other words, you may tell a Iron Warrior to bombard a bunker. He will bomb the shit out of that till the bunker doesn't even exist anymore. Now, an Emperor's Children, on the other hand, you may tell him to bomb a bunker. And he will tell the mortar crew how to use the mortar, how to perfectly execute the shots. And as a result, he may destroy that whole bunker with just 2 or 3 barrages, instead of just wasting ammunition by ammunition by ammunition just to wipe the damn bunker off the face of the map. He may just have 2 or 3 well-placed shots that not only reduce it to inoperable, but part of the structure is still standing so they can just refurbish it for their needs. It's one of those kind of things that you're going to see a lot of with the Emperor's Children, is that when they fight in battle, they're fighting with men, with just normal dudes who have auto guns and later on las guns, and they're leading them excellently. They're just fighting really well. This is something that was kind of looked down upon by other Space Marine forces, even the Salamanders, because humans are so full of inefficiencies. They're just not that good at really anything. If you tell a bunch of humans to ferry cargo to and from places, some of the cargo may go missing, whereas Astartes, that shit would not happen. So it's stuff like that that always was kind of weird when you look at the Emperor's Children, is how they're more humane than Salamanders. They actually care for people. They actually talk to people. They did a lot of human stuff, which is really cool. But that implicates their battle strategies. Even when the Horus Heresy was full-fledged going about, and they were actually a full legion by this point, around 80,000 dudes, they were still using Lord Commanders and Imperial Army forces in tangent with their forces. They were always well intertwined. And again, I think that's actually really great. I think that's pretty much how the Emperor's Children probably would have been. Is they, along with every other Space Marine, once all the wars were done, once the entire universe was conquered, they would just become mentors. They would just become supervisors. It would be some like Aramin. Aramin started to pick up how to make wine because he figured the Great Crusade was over with. He's like, well, there's probably nothing else to do here on Prospero. May as well learn to make wine. And it's something like that I could easily see the Astartes being, is where they just start picking up a task, picking up a job, and then they just become so good at it that they start leading lesser humans and making them proficient in their field. Now, the Emperor's Children always being so little of a fighting force, they were usually actually held in reserve. They spent most of their time with the Sons of Horus, back then known as the Luna Wolves. So they were never really allowed to grow their own strategies, like their own unique thing. Like, White Scars have their motorbikes. They love them. Can't get it without them. Dark Angels like being all weird but honorable at the same time, which just doesn't work, but hey, you do you. And then, you have the World Eaters who just ram their foreheads into the brick wall and one of them's going to collapse. Usually it's the brick wall. Don't know why, but it works. But the Emperor's Children, they never really developed their own unique strategies. Instead, they developed their own unique, I would say, personality, which is their obsession with perfection. They were always obsessed with perfection in every detail, from their armor down to their way that they conduct themselves in meetings and discussions, to even how they fight. And this is where it's the most important. You see, with Commander Eidolon, he's the shining example of just an absolute strategical dumbass. He's just not that good. But it shows what the Emperor's Children pretty much were during and before the Heresy, which is they were not good commanders. They just weren't. They weren't good strategists. They were more politicians. They like to shine bright in the room and tell everyone how great they are and what campaigns they were a part of that they succeeded in. Remind you, they were never really their own legion. They were kind of just a reserve force. Even when they found Fulgrim, they were pretty much a reserve force until very, very, very late into the Great Crusade. Like, we're talking like the last year of the fucking Great Crusade, they finally were their own legion. So when it came to their own commanders, they were kind of inept. They were kind of not that good. They were more used to just being told by other commanders, hey, deploy your forces here. Hey, deploy your forces there. And that's pretty much it. There was only a few individuals in the Emperor's Children who actually developed really great strategies, great tacticians, and they could hold the lines against insurmountable odds. They could hold at all cost, never faltering. And this would, of course, piss off Horus to no end. Saul Tarvitz is the first one that comes to mind because he led the whole Istvan campaign. He gathered the Luna Wolves, the World Eaters, the Death Guard, all the Loyalists, and he held for a good 3 months when all of them should have died in day one. This pissed off Horus and set his plans back so badly. So, there are some good commanders, but they're extremely rare. Most of the time, what the Emperor's Children focus on is, can they do something perfectly? In other words, can they do a drop pod assault perfectly? Will every single drop pod land, deploy, and shock the hell out of the enemy so that it's actually effective? Check. They could do it. Can they deploy siege equipment and blow open a whole city's gate? Yes, they could do that. But can they tie all these strategies and all these maneuvers together into a nice, coherent battle plan and execute it flawlessly? Not really. No, they really can't do that. You see this too with their Primarch Fulgrim. He's so busy making boasts about what his legion can do. And yes, they could do it. But strategically speaking, he does it very poorly. And he's always very, very close to failing his deadline. But once he exceeds his deadline, he all of a sudden starts to make even more ridiculous boasts before his forces can even recover. So again, it shines brightly that their legion Superpower humans, able to do things flawlessly when they set their minds to it. They even use enemy weapons against the enemies that they're fighting against to show them, ideologically get in their head and say, hey, you're using hooked blades? I can use hooked blades better than you. And it's all about sending a message. It's all about being perfect. And that's exactly how these guys would form their battle strategies, their battle plans, everything. They go, oh, okay, we're fighting these guys. Well, we're supposed to kill them in a month because as impossible as it is, our Primarch did make that. So let's just go down there and kick their asses with these flawless executions of maneuvers with no real overarching coherent plan to implement these. And by the way, let's use their own weapons against them to show that we're just that good against them. But there's also that other coherent part where they do lead men. Thaddeus Fail is one person who's always been with the Emperor's Children, huge loyalist to them, and he's just a Lord Commander. So when you get your shit kicked in by the Emperor's Children, just know there's going to be thousands and thousands of little men flooding in your rear without you knowing. And yes, that is a sex reference. Cha-ching, cha-ching. Because when we're talking about the bifurcated dick boys, it's kind of hard not to make a little sex joke every now and then. Besides that, this has been Freezer 700. I am out. Peace. Unless you're an Emperor's Children, peace would probably be death of you. Instead, you probably want things to be interesting. So let's get chaotic, baby. Slurp.